Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Gouldians. Last week we were discussing the inheritance of the yellow rump genetic. We also discussed a couple of definitions, which was the codominant, the dominant, and incomplete dominance. This week we're going to be focusing on the back colours or mutations of the Gouldian finch and how those are inherited. And we're going to be looking at the last three definitions that are relevant when it comes to the Gouldian finch, and that is your recessive genetic, your sex-linked codominance, and then finally your polygenic mutations. Okay, so we said for this particular episode we were going to look at three additional genetic inheritance types. The first definition that we need to look at is your recessive gene or mutation. What it means to have a recessive mutation is that you can be a carrier for that particular mutation, but it's not visible. So your cockbird or hen bird could be carrying it, but if you combine it then to another bird or pair it up with another bird that's also carrying the same genetic, it then becomes visible. The next definition that we're looking at is your sex-linked gene. So in that particular scenario, you're looking at one or the other bird. In the bird's case, or Gouldian's cases, we normally look at the cockbird, is the carrier for the additional gene. That doesn't mean that the hen birds can't carry it. It just means that they can only have a single copy, whereas the cockbird can be carrying two copies. The last trait that we're going to look at is the polygenic mutations, and basically what you do there is you take your best example of a particular mutation or beginnings of a mutation and you pair it back with another bird that's showing the similar traits, and slowly over time you build on it until you get your desired outcome. The following back colours are recognized mutations in the country. The greenback, which is the wild type, also referred to as the normal. You then get the dilute or single factor yellow. The correct term for this is actually heterozygous for yellow. You then get a double factor version, which is referred to as homozygous for yellow. In the blue series you get the blueback, the pastel and the silver. We'll deal in more detail with pastel and the silver, as it's actually a combination of different genes. It's not actually separate mutations. You then get a sea green mutation that is recognized. In terms of other genetics, there is another one that seems to be available in South Africa, and that is your cinnamon. I say it seems to be available as there's a lot of work that needs to be done to prove it, but we have seen some photographs and one of them is included in this particular video. Blueback mutation is probably the easiest to understand, so I'm going to start there, and that is it's a straightforward recessive mutation. What this means is that you can get split for blues as well as visual blues. Split for blue refers to a bird that is genetically carrying the mutation, but it is not visible, so it looks like a normal. If I had to breed a split bird to a visual bird, in other words one that has two copies of the genetic, you will get some of the offspring coming out as visual blues. Whereas if I had to breed the same bird, in other words a split for blue, to a normal, some of the babies will be split like the one parent, but there's no visual way to tell the difference between a split bird and just a plain normal. And that is why you need to be very careful if you're buying split for blue birds from a breeder, that it is someone that you trust or that has a reputation to uphold. The blue gene works by basically stripping out any yellow pigment from the normal green bird, leaving the blue coloration. It also then has the effect of areas that would normally be yellow on the bird turning white, as you can see on the sort of belly of the two birds pictured in this particular slide. It also therefore has the effect of turning the yellow rump bird, essentially the rump area would be white as well. The other interesting sort of side effect, if you like, of the blue mutation is that it turns the mask on a red or an orange bird, or red or orange headed bird should I say, it turns it more of a salmon pink colour. Once again, it's an effect of the blue mutation. The salmon head colour is not a separate mutation on its own. One thing that you should never do is breed a blue bird or blue Gouldian to another blue Gouldian, and the reason for this is that in South Africa in particular, the blue mutation was inbred a little bit too much, and the result is that the birds are quite weak genetically. And if you breed blue to blue, you might get away with it the first time, but over time you're going to decrease the strength of the bird and you're going to have a very high mortality rate. This brings us to the next mutation, which is your yellow-backed Gouldian. The yellow-back is a sex-linked codominant gene. So what does that mean? Well, the cockbird can carry 2 copies of the yellow gene. If you look at the pictures on the left, most of them you'll see the green has gone from the normal dark bottle green, if you like, on the normal Gouldian, and has changed to more of a lime green. Those are all examples of single factor yellows, or heterozygous for yellow. You'll also notice that the black on the bird looks washed out on the single factor, and it's basically made it grey. So this is one way to tell if it is a single factor bird. As you'll find in a white-breasted Gouldian, even if it's single factor, the back of the bird can appear virtually a clean yellow colour. And that is where a lot of breeders and keepers get confused between the single factor birds and the double factor. Talking about the double factor, you would look for basically all the black areas on the bird would then turn white, as can be seen by the bird on the bottom right hand side, and that would be when the bird has 2 copies of the gene. So in other words, it's homozygous for yellow or double factor. In the hen bird, a hen can only ever be single factor because of the yellow gene being sex-linked to the second chromosome on the male. So she would either be a yellow bird or a green bird. You will never get such a thing as a dilute hen. Due to the fact that the cockbird can essentially carry both colours, the green and the yellow, you will get a scenario if you breed it back to a normal hen where that particular cockbird can produce yellow female offspring, whereas all the cock offspring will either be greenbacks or dilutes. You will not get a double factor, in other words, from your dilute to normal hen pairing. If, however, you had to put that same dilute cock to a yellow hen, you may then get either dilute cocks or double factor cocks from that particular pairing. So you might be asking, but hang on, that doesn't agree with the definitions that we gave in previous slides. All the literature shows that the yellow genetic is sex-linked codominant. However, what I find interesting is that in the cockbirds, it acts more as a sex-linked incomplete dominant gene because you get the mixing of the yellow and the green to get an in-between colour. Why I think they've listed it as a codominant gene in terms of the sex link is because in your hen bird, the offspring will either be yellow or green, not a mixture of the two. We now come back to the blue genetic and also the yellow, in the sense that we're going to be talking about the pastel and the silver. Now, why do I say that? Well, the pastel and the silver mutations are not actually separate genetic mutations, but rather a result of mixing the 2 different mutations together. Therefore, a pastel bird is a bird with 2 copies of the blue gene, so in other words, a visible blue, but only a single copy of the yellow mutation. Therefore, you can only get pastel cocks. You never get such a thing as a pastel hen. The silver, however, would be 2 copies of both. So in other words, 2 copies of yellow and 2 copies of blue. In the case of the cock birds, would give you a silver. In the hen birds, it would obviously only take a single copy of yellow to give you a silver, due to the reasoning explained before, that it's a sex-linked gene in terms of the yellow. If we look at the composite white, which is a bird on the bottom left, you'll notice that the whole bird is white, and that is what we mean by the composite white. So you've removed all the back color by combining 2 copies of the blue with the yellow, and then on top of that we've put it to a white-breasted bird with a black head. And one of the things that you'll remember us discussing is that the yellow back genetic essentially affects the black of the bird, and in a double factor yellow case it actually makes it white. So you end up with this pure white bird that is referred to as a composite white. The next mutation that we're going to be working with today is the sea green. My very first auction purchase was actually a sea green hen. The sea green is basically, in terms of color, an in-between the green and the blue. So if you look at the top picture, you'll see the sea green on the left and the normal on the right. If you look at the bird right at the bottom, that's a normal blue, so you can get an idea of the color difference. The picture in the middle, you'll see the blue feathers in and amongst the green, giving it its color. Now, the issue that is going around with the sea green is that there seems to be 2 variations of the mutation. The one is commonly being referred to in Europe as a par blue, and they believe this to be a fault, not a true genetic mutation. In other words, you can't take that bird and reproduce it. If you breed it back to a normal and then take those normal looking offspring and breed it back to the parent, you're still not going to produce any birds that look sea green. The other version of it is believed to be recessive. So that version is the true sea green, if you like, and we believe it to be in the country, and basically it would behave the same as the blue. So in other words, if you had to take a visual sea green and breed it back to normal, all the babies would be split for sea green. If you then had to take that split bird and breed it back to the parent, that is sea green, you will start getting visual sea greens coming into effect. The point of interest with the sea green is that it seems to be more common in your red and orange-headed birds. I've seen very few sea greens with the black-headed birds. Coming back to the par blue, one way that you can test if you've got the recessive version or the par blue version is that the par blue is essentially believed to be a visual recessive for blue. So in other words, if you had to take that sea green bird and breed it back to blue, you should start getting blues coming out or split to blues. That would be the difference, because a sea green it's a separate mutation. So in other words, blue is going to make no difference to the bird. Cinnamon is a sex-linked gene from the research that I've done from other countries that already have tested the genetics. I say that because it has been seen in South Africa, but there's very few guys that have been able to sort of show examples of it, and as a result the bird hasn't really been, well, the gene hasn't been vigorously tested. The bird on the bottom left hand side is one of the South African examples, and basically if you have a look at the rump section of the bird, you'll notice that the colouring is off. It's more of a pink rump colour, and this is a giveaway for the cinnamon gene. You'll also notice the slight difference in colouring on the wings of the bird, and the most sort of obvious change in terms of of the bird is if you look under the beak of the bird where the black would normally be, you'll see that cinnamon changes it to a red colour. And that is a dead giveaway that there's something else going on. The colour changes also seem to affect the eye colour of newly hatched chicks from black in the normal to a plum color, but that does change darker around 7 to 10 days. And the skin color of the legs also change from dark to more of a flesh color. The cinnamon is like the yellow genetic in that it is sex-linked, but is recessive, not a codominant gene. So a cinnamon hen, there cannot be split hens. It's either cinnamon or it's not. Whereas a cinnamon cock, it could be split essentially for cinnamon and therefore not be visual. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed that. Next week we're going to be looking at the breast colors of the Gouldian finch. Please remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this series so that you don't miss out on next week's episode.